Are you secretly wondering why you feel so different on the inside than how you think others see you? That gap between who you really are and who you think you are might be bigger than you realize, and it's probably affecting every area of your life without you even knowing it. Most of us walk around with a completely distorted view of ourselves. We see ourselves through a funhouse mirror that makes our flaws look huge and our strengths invisible. We carry around stories about who we are that were written by other people, shaped by moments that happened years ago, influenced by societal conditioning that never really fit us in the first place. Today, we're going to talk about something that can fundamentally change your life. It's called self-perception, and understanding how it works is the key to emotional intelligence, authentic confidence, and creating the relationships and success you actually want. Self-perception is simply how you see yourself. It's the internal image you carry around, the story you tell yourself about your worth, your capabilities, your place in the world. But here's what most people don't realize. Your self-perception isn't objective truth. It's not even close to reality most of the time. Think about this for a moment. When you look in the mirror, do you see the same person your best friend sees when they look at you? When you think about your accomplishments, do you feel the same pride that someone who loves you feels when they think about what you've achieved? Probably not. This isn't just about self-esteem issues, though low self-esteem is definitely part of it. This is about the fundamental way your brain processes information about yourself. Your mind has built-in filters that distort how you see yourself, and most of these filters are working against you. Let me share something that might surprise you. Research shows that about 70% of people have a more negative view of themselves than others have of them. 70%. That means if you're sitting there thinking you're not that great, there's a really good chance that everyone around you sees you more positively than you see yourself. But why does this happen? How did we end up so disconnected from our own reality? The answer lies in understanding what I call the distortion factors. These are the invisible forces that shape your self-perception, usually without you realizing it. The first distortion factor is your past experiences, particularly the negative ones. Your brain is wired to pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. It's called the negativity bias, and it exists because our ancestors needed to remember dangerous situations to survive. But in modern life, this same mechanism makes you remember criticism more than praise, failures more than successes, rejection more than acceptance. Maybe a teacher told you that you weren't good at math when you were 8 years old. Maybe someone laughed at you when you tried to sing. Maybe you got rejected by someone you liked in high school. These experiences get stored in your memory with emotional intensity, and they start to shape how you see yourself. The second distortion factor is societal conditioning. From the moment you're born, you're bombarded with messages about who you should be, how you should look, what you should want, how you should behave. These messages come from family, media, culture, religion, education. They become so ingrained that you start to think they're your own thoughts. For women especially, this conditioning often includes messages about being smaller, quieter, more accommodating, about putting others first and yourself last, about measuring your worth through other people's approval or your ability to take care of everyone else. These messages create a distorted self-perception where your own needs, wants, and authentic nature get pushed into the background. The third distortion factor is what psychologists call cognitive biases. These are systematic errors in thinking that affect your perception of yourself and your abilities. One of the most common is the imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're fooling everyone and you're going to be found out as a fraud, even when you're clearly competent and successful. Another common bias is the comparison trap. You compare your internal experience to other people's external appearance. You see other people's highlight reels and compare them to your behind-the-scenes reality. This creates a distorted perception where everyone else seems more confident, more successful, more put together than you are. The fourth distortion factor is lack of self-awareness. Most people never take the time to really understand themselves. They don't know their core values, their natural strengths, their emotional patterns, their triggers, their motivations. Without this self-knowledge, they end up defining themselves through external feedback. other people's opinions, or random life events. Now, why does this matter? Why should you care about having an accurate self-perception? Because your self-perception affects literally everything in your life. It affects your confidence, your decision-making, your relationships, your career choices, your ability to set boundaries, your willingness to take risks, your capacity for happiness. When your self-perception is distorted in a negative direction, which it is for most people, it creates a cascade of problems. You underestimate your abilities, so you don't go for opportunities you could succeed at. You focus on your flaws, so you try to hide parts of yourself instead of being authentic. You doubt your judgment, so you seek validation from others instead of trusting yourself. In relationships, poor self-perception shows up as people-pleasing. Difficulty setting boundaries, choosing partners who don't treat you well because you don't think you deserve better, or pushing away people who do treat you well because you don't believe you're worthy of love. If you're finding value in this perspective, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future content and can support your personal growth journey. In your career or business, distorted self-perception might look like staying in jobs that don't fulfill you because you don't think you're capable of more, undercharging for your services, not speaking up in meetings, avoiding leadership roles, or sabotaging your own success because deep down you don't feel you deserve it. But here's the good news. Self-perception isn't fixed. It's not your destiny. It can be changed. And when you change it, everything else starts to change too. The T is gaining what I call objective self-knowledge. Objective self-knowledge is understanding yourself based on evidence rather than emotion, patterns rather than isolated incidents, your whole self rather than just your perceived flaws. It's like cleaning the lens through which you see yourself. The first step in gaining objective self-knowledge is identifying your core values. Most people have never done this exercise seriously. They might have a vague idea of what they think is important, but they've never clearly defined what actually matters most to them. Your values are like your internal compass. When you know what they are and you live in alignment with them, you feel authentic and confident. When you live out of alignment with your values, you feel stressed, conflicted, and disconnected from yourself. To identify your values, think about the times in your life when you felt most alive, most energized, most like yourself. What was happening? What principles were you honoring? Think about the people you most admire. What qualities do they embody that resonate with you? Think about what makes you angry or upset. Often, these reactions point to values that are being violated. The second component of objective self-knowledge is understanding your natural strengths and talents. This isn't about ego or comparison. It's about honest recognition of what you're naturally good at, what comes easily to you, what energizes you rather than drains you. Many people, especially women, have been conditioned to downplay their strengths or to only focus on areas where they need improvement. But understanding your strengths is essential for building authentic confidence and making choices that align with who you really are. The third component is recognizing your patterns. We all have patterns in how we think, feel, and behave. Some of these patterns serve us well, and others don't. But most people aren't consciously aware of their patterns, so they keep repeating the same cycles without understanding why. Emotional intelligence starts with recognizing your emotional patterns. What triggers certain reactions in you? How do you typically respond to stress, conflict, disappointment, or success? What are your default coping mechanisms? When you understand these patterns, you can start to choose your responses instead of just reacting automatically. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. I worked with a woman named Sarah who came to me feeling completely stuck in her career. She was a marketing manager at a tech company, and she told me she was terrible at her job, that everyone was smarter than her, that she was probably going to get fired. When we started working together, I asked her to show me her performance reviews. They were all excellent. I asked her to tell me about her recent projects. She had led several successful campaigns that had significantly increased her company's revenue. I asked her colleagues about her. They all described her as creative, strategic, and reliable. The gap between Sarah's self-perception and reality was enormous. through our work together. She started to see how her distorted self-perception had been shaped by one critical comment from a boss 3 years earlier, combined with growing up in a family where nothing she did was ever quite good enough. As Sarah gained objective self-knowledge about her values, strengths, and patterns, her self-perception started to shift. She began to see herself more accurately. She started speaking up in meetings, proposing new ideas, advocating for herself. Within 6 months, she had been promoted to director, but the most important change wasn't the promotion. It was that Sarah started to trust herself. She stopped constantly seeking validation from others. She stopped hiding her ideas because she was afraid they weren't good enough. She started showing up as her authentic self, and paradoxically, this made her more successful and more likable, not less. This brings us to one of the most important aspects of healthy self-perception: radical self-acceptance. This doesn't mean thinking you're perfect or that you don't need to grow. It means accepting all parts of yourself, including the parts you wish were different. Most people practice conditional self-acceptance. They think they'll accept themselves when they lose weight, when they're more successful, when they're in a relationship, when they stop making mistakes. But this approach keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-criticism and never feeling good enough. Radical self-acceptance means accepting yourself as you are right now while still working toward the person you want to become. It means acknowledging your flaws without being defined by them. It means recognizing your mistakes as learning opportunities rather than evidence of your unworthiness. This concept often gets misunderstood, especially in our achievement-oriented culture. People think self-acceptance means settling or giving up on growth, but the opposite is true. When you accept yourself unconditionally, you actually create the psychological safety needed for real growth and change. Think about it this way. If you're constantly criticizing yourself, you're operating from a place of fear and scarcity. You're trying to avoid more criticism, more failure, more rejection. This puts your nervous system in defensive mode, which actually limits your creativity, your willingness to take risks, and your ability to connect with others. But when you accept yourself fully, you're operating from a place of love and abundance. You're not trying to avoid anything. You're moving toward what you want, guided by your values and vision, rather than by fear. This is where authentic confidence comes from. I want to pause here and address something specifically for the women watching this. Women empowerment isn't just about external achievements or breaking glass ceilings, though those things matter. True empowerment starts with how you see and treat yourself. Society has conditioned many women to view self-acceptance and self-love as selfish or narcissistic. You might have been taught that putting yourself first is wrong, that your worth comes from how much you give to others, that taking care of your own needs is somehow bad. But here's the truth. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot love others well if you don't love yourself. You cannot create healthy relationships if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself. Self-acceptance and self-love aren't selfish. They're necessary. And here's another truth that might be hard to hear. No one else can give you the acceptance and love you're not willing to give yourself. You might get temporary validation from others, but if you don't fundamentally accept yourself, their approval will never feel like enough. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one thing you've learned about yourself recently that surprised you? Sometimes sharing these insights helps them stick. Now let's talk about how to build authentic confidence through accurate self-perception. Most people think confidence means feeling sure about everything, never doubting yourself, always being positive. But that's not real confidence. That's either arrogance or performance. Real confidence is knowing yourself well enough to trust your judgment, even when you don't have all the answers. It's being comfortable with uncertainty, because you know you can figure things out as you go. It's being willing to be vulnerable, because you're not trying to protect a false image. Authentic confidence comes from self-knowledge, not from comparison or external validation. When you know your values, you can make decisions that feel right to you, regardless of what others think. When you know your strengths, you can contribute meaningfully without constantly worrying about whether you're good enough. When you understand your patterns, you can recognize when your emotions are giving you useful information versus when they're just replaying old stories. This type of confidence is incredibly attractive to others and incredibly valuable in all areas of life. People can sense when someone is comfortable in their own skin versus when someone is performing or seeking approval. Authentic confidence creates trust, connection, and influence in ways that performance never can. Let me give you some practical techniques for developing more accurate self-perception and authentic confidence. The first is what I call the evidence inventory. Most people make sweeping judgments about themselves based on limited evidence, usually focusing on failures or negative feedback while ignoring successes and positive feedback. The evidence inventory is a simple but powerful exercise. Take a belief you have about yourself, especially a negative one. Maybe you think you're bad at relationships, or you're not creative, or you're not a leader. Now gather actual evidence for and against this belief. For the evidence against, look at times when you've been successful in relationships, times when you've been creative, times when you've led others effectively. Ask trusted friends or colleagues for their perspective. Look at your accomplishments, your growth over time, positive feedback you've received. You'll probably discover that the negative belief isn't as true as you thought. It might have been true in certain contexts or at certain times, but it's not a fixed characteristic of who you are. The second technique is values-based decision-making. Start making choices based on what aligns with your core values, rather than what you think you should do or what others expect of you. This builds self-trust and authentic confidence over time. For example, if one of your core values is creativity, but you're in a job that doesn't allow for creative expression, this misalignment will affect your confidence and sense of self. Finding ways to honor your creativity, either in your current role or through changes in your career, will strengthen your sense of authentic self. The third technique is pattern recognition without judgment. Start noticing your emotional and behavioral patterns without immediately trying to change them or judging them as good or bad. Just observe with curiosity. Maybe you notice that you tend to get anxious before social events. Instead of judging this as weakness or trying to force yourself not to feel anxious, just notice the pattern. What specifically triggers the anxiety? How does it show up in your body? How do you typically handle it? This kind of non-judgmental awareness is the first step toward conscious choice. If you want to go deeper into understanding your emotional patterns and building authentic confidence, check out our other videos on the channel where we explore practical techniques for personal transformation. Now, let's address some of the obstacles you might face as you work on developing more accurate self-perception. The first obstacle is resistance from others. When you start seeing yourself more clearly and acting more authentically, the people around you might feel uncomfortable with these changes. This happens because your relationships with others are partly based on the roles you've been playing. If you've been the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the helper who never needs help, people might resist when you start setting boundaries, making mistakes openly, or asking for support. This resistance isn't necessarily malicious. It's just that change in one person affects the whole system. But it's important not to let other people's comfort zones limit your growth. You have the right to see yourself clearly and live authentically, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The second obstacle is the discomfort of seeing yourself accurately. Sometimes distorted self-perception, even when it's negative, feels safer than accurate self-perception. Negative self-perception can protect you from disappointment, from taking risks, from having expectations that might not be met. Seeing yourself clearly means acknowledging both your strengths and your areas for growth. It means taking responsibility for your life and your choices. It means giving up the victim story that might have been protecting you from having to try your best or put yourself out there. This growth mindset approach to self-perception can feel scary at first, but it's also incredibly liberating. When you see yourself accurately, you can make choices based on reality rather than fear or fantasy. The third obstacle is the time and effort required. Developing accurate self-perception and authentic confidence isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice that requires consistent attention and honest self-reflection. Many people want a quick fix, a simple technique that will instantly make them confident and self-aware. But real change happens through small, consistent actions over time. It happens through paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It happens through questioning your assumptions about yourself and others. But here's what makes it worth the effort. When you see yourself clearly, everything becomes easier. Decisions become easier because you know what matters to you. Relationships become easier because you're not trying to be someone you're not. Work becomes easier because you can leverage your natural strengths and address your growth areas honestly. You stop wasting energy on trying to prove yourself or hide parts of yourself. You stop seeking validation from others because you trust your own judgment. You stop comparing yourself to others because you're focused on your own path and progress. Let me share another story that illustrates this transformation. I worked with a woman named Maya who came to me feeling completely lost. She was 35, had achieved external success in her career as a lawyer, but felt empty and disconnected from herself. Maya realized that she had been living according to her parents' expectations and societal conditioning for so long that she didn't even know who she really was underneath all of that. She had chosen law because it was prestigious and stable, not because it aligned with her values or interests. Through our work together, Maya started to explore her authentic self. She discovered that her core values included creativity, connection, and making a positive impact on people's lives. She realized that her natural strengths were in communication, empathy, and seeing the big picture. She also recognized patterns in her life where she had been saying yes to things that didn't align with who she was, and saying no to opportunities that scared her but excited her. She had been operating from fear of disappointment rather than pursuit of fulfillment. As Maya developed more accurate self-perception, she made some significant changes. She transitioned from corporate law to family mediation, which allowed her to use her legal skills in a way that aligned with her values. She started writing in her spare time, honoring her creative side. She began setting boundaries with her family about their expectations for her life. These changes weren't easy, and they didn't happen overnight. But as Maya became more authentic, she also became more confident, more energized, and more successful in ways that actually mattered to her. This is what becomes possible when you see yourself clearly and accept yourself fully. You stop living other people's lives and start living your own. You stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be real. You stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment. As we wrap up, I want you to consider what might be possible for you if you truly saw yourself clearly and accepted yourself fully. Imagine making decisions from a place of self-knowledge rather than fear or shoulds. Imagine showing up in your relationships as your authentic self rather than trying to be who you think others want you to be. Imagine pursuing work and goals that actually align with who you are rather than who you think you should be. This clarity and authenticity isn't just personal development for its own sake. It's the foundation for creating a life that actually fits you, relationships that actually nourish you, and success that actually fulfills you. The journey toward clear self-perception and authentic confidence starts with a simple commitment to truth. Truth about who you are, what you value, what you're good at, what you're working on, what you want, what you don't want. This truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always liberating. You are not the sum of your mistakes, your perceived flaws, or other people's opinions of you. You are not the story you've been telling yourself about your limitations. You are a complex, evolving, valuable human being with unique gifts to offer the world. But you can only offer those gifts when you see them clearly. You can only live authentically when you know who you are authentically. You can only love yourself when you're willing to see yourself fully. If this video has shifted something for you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes the people closest to us are carrying distorted self-perceptions that are limiting their happiness and potential. Remember, self-perception isn't fixed. It can be changed. And when you change how you see yourself, you change everything else too. You become the conscious creator of your own life rather than the unconscious victim of your conditioning. The clarity you're seeking about yourself is available to you. The confidence you want is possible. The authentic life you dream of is within reach. It all starts with being willing to see yourself clearly, accept yourself fully, and trust yourself. You want to explore more techniques for building self-awareness and authentic confidence? Make sure to watch our other videos where we go deeper into practical tools for personal transformation. And don't forget to let me know in the comments what insights resonated most with you from today's discussion. Your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you'll ever have. It affects every other relationship, every decision, every opportunity, every moment of your life. Make it a good one.